Hey there, Faith Church. Pastor Bryon here with your weekly Monday Mindset video. And, one of the things I'm passionate about, obviously, is discipleship. And part of that is spiritual growth. And so today I want to talk to you about spiritual growth. How is your growth? Are you growing in your faith? Because I've seen all over the scriptures that it's a command. And the passage that really sparked this for me this week is Hebrews chapter 5. Starting in verse 12, I'll read this for you. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he's a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice. I've been wrestling with this lately because something that really breaks my heart is to see believers who are stagnant in their faith, who just aren't growing. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a child. I know here it tells us that we're being commanded to grow and to mature in our faith and to move on from milk. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a child. In fact, we rejoice in being a child of God. There's nothing wrong with milk, right? We still drink milk as we get older, but we are to move on from that. In fact, 1 Peter 2 also talks about craving pure spiritual milk. But he's also speaking to immature believers because he goes on to say that believers should long for pure spiritual milk so that they may grow up into salvation. Right? Milk is just the foundational diet of newborns, newborn Christians, newborn babies. So let's think about that analogy. You know what we don't do with babies? We don't bring them home, stick a bottle in their mouth, put them in the corner and say, have a great life. Right? And that sounds funny. It sounds silly. It's exactly what we do with brand new believers all the time. Right? We're happy that they're at the church. Maybe they said the prayer. Maybe they've received Christ. And then we just sort of put them in the corner and hope that they grow. But that's not what we do with babies. We raise them up. Right? We teach them, we grow them, we feed them, and we teach them to become independent. We give them soft food or baby food and then solid food, and we help them learn to flourish. A child is expected to grow. So are we as believers. Right? And here in Hebrews 5, we see that there's something we eventually grow into. We grow into being teachers. For though by this time you ought to be teachers. And he's talking to the believers of this church. Just like children grow up to become parents and adults one day, maybe they don't all become parents, but they at least become able and capable of being parents, we also are to be like parents. There's a process of a newborn believer being fed, just like a newborn is fed, and we're fed the basics of the Christian faith, the basics of the gospel, which is the milk, and we never go away from that. That's always the foundation. But then we move on and we continue to grow with more. And then eventually you have to ask the question, who's doing the feeding? Who are they being fed by? They're being fed by those who are more mature. And you might make the argument, hey, Pastor Bryon, that's you and Mike and Ryan and Zach. Maybe that's the elders that do the feeding. I would absolutely argue against that. Throughout the scriptures, we are called to be ministers of the gospel and ambassadors of Christ, and we're called to be priests in some ways, and we're this passage is given to believers. The Great Commission is given to those who claim to be disciples of Christ. We see the example given to 2 Timothy of teaching others who can teach others. Right? If you are maturing in your faith or mature in your faith, you are to teach others. So we must be growing and we must be helping other people grow. And part of discipleship that I want you to grasp is that we grow because we are being fed, and others grow because they are being fed. Right? Being deliberately taught and led by example. Those are ways that we are fed. So let me go back to my original question. How is your spiritual growth these days? Are you growing or are you stagnant? Are you being fed? Are you helping to feed others? Are you being led? Are you leading by example? Let me spend the last couple minutes here just talking about ways that I think you can help your own spiritual growth. And I'm not going to talk about books you can read or things you can do, but rather sort of environments that you can put yourself in, things you can do to set yourself up for success in growing and maturing in your faith. And I'm not going to go by way of importance. I'm going to go kind of big to small. from large groups to personal. So first, large group, church. Get involved in the church. Be a member of the church. Be part of the church. The church does so much. It's the beginning of that gospel teaching. It provides accountability. It fans that flame. It provides things like just communion and unity and the corporate worship. And there's so many things. But it also provides the context for these other three things that I want to talk about. So you've got the large group, and then you've got the small group. Right? Discipleship groups. We've got life groups that meet at homes. We've got men's groups. We've got women's groups. These are groups of fellow believers that can help you grow, help teach you things. They hold you accountable. They encourage you. Get involved in one of those groups. Start your own group. Find something. And for those of you that have been involved in one of those groups for a long time, I'm going to challenge you to pray about leading your own. At some point we mature and we grow, and it's time to feed others. And if you need help with that, maybe you need to be equipped or prepared or encouraged in that. That's what I'm here for. Reach out to me. Let me know. So if you need to get plugged into a group, or you're willing to start a group and you just need some help, let me know. So from large groups to small groups to one-on-one, right? I'm not sure if I know a person in my life who is a mature believer, a man or a woman of God who wouldn't tell you that they've been significantly impacted by a mentor, by somebody who has taken them under their wing and helped them grow. Who do you call when you need advice or prayer or help? Right, so find a mentor in your life. If you just look around you and find one, and if you can't find one, contact me and I'll help you find one. And if you have one, start to be one. Take someone under your wing. And then finally, and maybe most important, is your own personal growth, right? You can move around, you can go different places, you can go to a different church, but two things that will never change is God and you. It's your guys' relationship. Now, don't misunderstand me. We are created for fellowship. Right? I'm not saying that you can be a mature Christian by doing this thing on your own, but what I am saying is that you need to engage and interact with God yourself. So develop those habits of having your personal relationship with God. So Faith Church, I want to encourage you to evaluate your spiritual growth. Maybe even create a plan where you write down the things that you're doing in your life to grow spiritually. And if you need help with that, let me know. I'd love to help you. Know that I'm praying for your growth, that we would all strive to be mature, Christ-like believers who help others to mature in their faith as well. So pray as well for your maturity and for multiplication. Faith Church, have a great week.